morning to you, and thank you so much for keeping it NBS Television. This is the Morning Breeze, your most authoritative morning current affairs show. My name is Mildred Tohaise, and of course, we are 11 days into the month of October. That also means that our brothers and sisters who will be sitting for their Uganda Certificate of Exam results will be taking their briefing today, and then they will be starting off their exams, and that will be on Monday. Uganda is just out of the 62nd independence anniversary celebrations, and Busia did particularly host the celebrations. But away from that, our neighbors have just decided to keep us well-braced with information that is going on. They've decided to keep us talking about them. I am talking about Kenya. Ever since that Gen Z whole idea, the protests that did come through with their demands, they weren't requests, their demands, some of them, which President William Ruto came through with, it feels like the battle had started from within. And one of his own, Deputy President, out at least for the lower house and waiting for the Senate to be able to decide whether what the lower house agreed with, that is Rigathi Gachagua, whether he should be leaving, even after he had offered a public apology, by the way. He offered an apology, and even on behalf of his wife. But I think the lower house said, apology not accepted. Thank you, sir. You need to be able to exit this over issues of corruption, divisive politics, and all that. We'll be delving into that and what it means and what precedent it does set and what lessons we would be drawing from there. But also for the 62nd independence anniversary, one of the biggest promises is that we'll be constructing roads to the Central African Republic, because the president did emphasize, especially towards the tail end of his conversation, he emphasized Africa's political and economic integration, the same kind of a conversation that he did put up when he was vouching for roads being constructed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We are going to have another time of MPs making a lot of noise and saying those roads are not important. The roads here that we haven't been able to deal with, why are we going out there? But Uganda also has a lot of things. So, okay, now we know that the Acholi and Bamasaba didn't reduce in numbers. There was just a mix-up. But all the other numbers that you have seen regarding the 2024 census results are true. Take it or leave it. That is according to the Census Commissioner and the Executive Director of the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. We've had quite a lot. But anyway, it's a roundtable, and we'll be having the journalist perspective with regard to some of the key highlights of the stories that have made headlines this particular week. And I can't wait to be introducing to you my panel of distinguished guests this morning who will be making sense of some of these stories. I was thinking about making them sing the national anthem, but because I've already mentioned it, they could have Googled up the lyrics already. So I will leave that aside, because I saw in one of the videos we made this week, one of my guests was asked to sing, was given a lead to the second stanza of the national anthem. He decided to sing the anthem of a kingdom. But it is fine. Let me introduce to you my guests in no particular order. On my extreme end is Mr. Joseph Sabiti, a journalist, but also currently working with the Office of the Speaker of the Republic of Uganda. Very good morning to you, Joseph. Why are you sighing while speaking this morning? Good morning to you, and happy independence to you as well. Are you able to sing the three stanzas of Uganda's national anthem? Okay, it's okay. But that sounds doubtful, but it is fine. No, I know that you should have been able to.
I think that from when you people dragged us from Congo and brought us into your country, we're quite integrated very well.
It is well. It is perfectly okay. Paul Kayonga is our Luganda News Desk editor. Of course, if you've been listening, I mean paying attention to our Masengeja News Bulletin, yeah, he went away for a little bit. It's always good to do an upgrade of yourself, get a better version of yourself, and he is back. You've probably not seen him quite a lot on air, but he's back in the newsroom, and today I'm glad to have him right here. Paul, a very good morning to you, and it's a pleasure having you, at least for my debut, hosting you on the Media Roundtable.
First time I'm appearing here, and it's really good experience.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
You have very good neighbors, especially the one on your extreme right. Just say, I just said,
This
Joseph.
means that I am due for retirement.
It doesn't mean anything.
It
It
does.
means it means that actually you need to stay more and longer.
The young kids are ready, they have taken their seats.
Yeah, sure.
And
And they're doing great.
they're doing great. It's not in our nature to keep sticking around. So
Who are you trying to
I
tell?
said, you see, that's the reason why I said the person who is seated on your right. But it's okay.
You should say it
We'll keep
directly.
it away.
That.
And Mr. Elias Muchibi, who is rattling someone somewhere, somehow, ahead of where we are heading to in 2026, but I'll keep it at that. He is our journalist, and that is the reason why we have him on the Media Roundtable. He particularly had an issue with the color of my shoe. Like, out of all the colors on my dress and jacket, he could only see one color. I don't know why, but a very good morning to you, Mr. Elias.
Thank you, Mildred. I'm happy to be here
A bigger
again.
Friday, allow me to say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Wa
barakatuh.
alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I didn't have a problem with the color of your shoe, actually. I was just here saying maybe you're about to rattle someone and you are just now starting to brand yourself. But that's not a problem.
No. you know, if we were to get away with all the colors, yellow will be out, it's NRM blue will be out, it's FTC, purple, no. It's a color wheel. We choose which color we want to
And
wear.
someone commented here that you actually, when you dress like that, you actually look prime
Council,
ministerial
protect me.
material.
Council, protect me. Council Joel Mukisa, it's a pleasure having you, and thank God he sat right next to me, so I have a little bit of legal representation and protection. It's been a while. A very good morning to you, and thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you so much, Mildred. The pleasure is all mine. Good morning to our viewers.
Good morning. I have Ugandans on the set and definitely would feel proud to start talking about the 62nd independence anniversary of Uganda. For me, I always equate it to a birthday. And many a times people say, what has changed? We are 62. Another person said, with regard to our age, our age, our life expectancy, Uganda is just getting close to that life expectancy where after that particular age you're living in bonus years. But it's been 62 years since the Union Jack was lowered, Uganda's flag was hoisted. What has changed? What are the lessons we have to pick up from our own self? Because for me, I think after celebrating 50 years of independence, it had to be now time for introspection. There is nowhere we could start now blaming the very colonial masters who we fought because they didn't give it to us on a silver platter, who we fought for being for being the cause, the root cause, the problem. Many have said maybe the foundation as well also does matter quite a lot. But what is there to celebrate about 62 years? And the statements that did come through. Number one, of course, President Yoweri Museveni did laud the commander, the chief of defense forces, I beg your pardon, for rationalization of the parade. That was one. And another of all that the president said seemed to rattle particularly feathers with regard to talking about construction of roads in the Central African Republic. And of course, let me get to speak to areas. I'll be taking it on fast with you. What stood out of the president's speech, and as we celebrate 62 years of independence, what does this remind you about Uganda? I know you weren't present by then, but of course history has been written, it's been read, what we did, what we were, and who we are today.
Yeah, thank you. A lot has been said about what the president said and what many people actually think of what we call our independence. And so maybe we are coming on to the topic late. I was watching a few seniors, I think in this studio last night, discussing the same subject. And one man who was missing, who should have been there, Norbert Mao. When I was at university at the turn of the century, he used to come around, then he was much younger, and so there was something called UB40, not the band, but he had something called UB40, Ugandans below 40. And he told us that the problem that Uganda faces now after independence is that we are being led by people who were born before independence.
Okay.
That it's us, the people who were below 40 by then. That time he was below 40 himself. I don't know what he thinks now, because age is such a problem. When you are young and strong and powerful, you feel like you'll always be that.
Yeah,
One day I was
sure.
actually joking with him and saying, hey man, you be 40 now, what do we have to say? You be 60? Because we have to take power and change this country. And so there has been this generational blame game.
Yeah.
And so when I saw the president say what he said, and detailing what he says is his historical mission, he kept saying we, and I thought he was talking about himself when he said we instilled this and then decided this is what is supposed to happen, these are our strategic objectives and all that and stuff. He can't have been talking about so many other people, because most of his contemporaries with whom he can say they distilled the ideas have been swept by the wayside, and he's the only man standing, talking to other people now, most of them much younger than him, about our historical mission.
Yeah.
So that what intrigued me about his speech mostly was the thinking now, how do we take that forward? How do we manage Uganda for the future? Because the president came and he was talking about the Sekou Toures, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Mwalimu Nyereres, the Kaundas, the people who envisioned Africa after independence, and they had their own ideas of what they thought we needed to do to decolonize and become better countries that were self-sustaining and independent of the West. I think now the problem that came to my mind as he spoke was our generation, maybe the generation that came after Yoweri Museveni. What have we done to rethink Africa, to see how we can actually fashion it for the future? How can we compete in the fourth industrial revolution? Because he's talking about things that you say maybe are important, but are not so important, because when you're talking about how many million bags of coffee we have now been able to produce from 2 to 9 or something, we still export them. And then he comes and he says, but still, Germany will get more money out of coffee than all the countries that produce coffee combined. Even if Germany doesn't produce a single berry of coffee. So, in brief, he was only saying that we have not moved an inch, even if there have been a few cosmetic things that have happened.
Okay.
And I don't want to pay too much attention to everything else that was in the speech. My biggest consideration now is there is no new conversation coming out of us to say this is what our forefathers did, the guys who came before us. Now, this is how we want to manage Africa and position it to compete with the rest of the world.
Okay, thank you very much. Joel, this is why I come through, and like I said earlier on, intentionally, that we are all post-independence children, but meaning that at independence there was a dream. There are not so many African, maybe the difference between Uganda and some other African countries was Uganda was a protectorate while the others were actually being directly, they were colonies while Uganda, yes, they were settler colonies while Uganda was simply a protectorate. The dream was of self-rule. The dream was of let's get the white man out and take matters into our own hands. But right now, I think the biggest conversation that comes through for every independence, not only for Uganda, is always the idea of neo-colonialism. Was it just a facade that, yes, the white man is out, it's the black man, but it's still the same kind of conversation?
Definitely. Mildred, I want to illustrate with an example. When you come, as you're coming to NBS, after NBS, you have to slope down the first police station you meet is Old Kira Road Police Station.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yes.
When you continue alongside that road, just curve and continue. The next police station you'll meet is Wandagea Police Station. When you continue with that road, you'll meet CPS. All those are colonial outposts of police. They have been here for way too long. And what was the purpose? The purpose was simply to say, when you rotate around them, you find that you're coming back to the same place. When you go to CPS, you can come back through and come back to Old Kira Road. The purpose was simple. The purpose was to say that the people who stayed in Kololo were the whites, the colonial masters. The people who stayed in Kamocha, Bukoto, those areas were the Mayindi, Asians. And down there would be the Africans. So the purpose for those police posts was to say, if a revolt came from down, it would be quelled by these police posts. Why am I giving that example? That example says that in a post-colonial country, the institution of the police may now be under people of the same skin, but the state and its apparatus still remain colonial.
Okay.
The colonial state. When we celebrate 62 years of independence, I don't know whether it means you're celebrating 62 years of the independence of the Ugandan state or the Ugandan society. Because the state of Uganda is born out of colonialism. It is a creature of colonialism. The society of Uganda predates colonialism by thousands of years. So, first of all, I need to draw that distinction. When we talk about independence, it is the independence of the state of Uganda, not
the people of Uganda.
Not the society per se.
Okay.
The society was definitely inflected by the colonial imposition for all those years, and it still does. And when people say that we cannot blame the colonialists, we are 60 years old, 62 years old.
Should have been able to turn around things.
Yeah, no, just to be, I'm not convinced by that argument. The legacy of colonialism lives today in the global structures of power, in international trade, and the sort. Mildred, I want to illustrate this by what the economists call international value chain. Whether you have the best democracy, whether you have the fakest democracy, I don't know how to term it, where you'll be economically will be determined by where you are in what they call the international value chain.
Yeah.
The price of the iPhone today is about $1,000. The iPhone is made by a mineral mine in Congo called coltan. But what percentage of money goes to Congo out of the 1,000 of that one singular iPhone sold? It will be 2 to 4%. 16% to 20% will be going to a country like China, which is assembling. And 80% will go to an innovator, who is America. Eriasa here has told us that the president said Germany does not do any coffee, does not have any coffee berry, but it gets the largest amount of the coffee sold in the world.
Actually, Africa, he always says all African countries and other coffee growing areas get less than about 5% of the entire value of the coffee market.
Yes. And definitely so, because you don't have where to market. These people are in charge of the market. They are in charge of the monopoly. Actually, I'm not so sure that even the bags that the president says are purely, because you find there are foreign companies registered, and the president foreign companies registered that are doing this kind of coffee work. And the president has himself been a neocolonialist master in the sense that he has advocated for foreign direct investment. It sounds fancy today. It is something everyone is preaching and things like that, but it is really exploitative. The biggest taxpayers, quote unquote, biggest taxpayers in this country do not even own a building in Uganda. Am I correct? They don't own a building in Uganda. They engage in transfer pricing. They engage in profit repatriation.
But he's looking at jobs created, how that turns around the economy, expatriatism, or even skills that are being transferred. Then maybe at a later stage, like a metamorphosis, at a later stage, things change.
The commanding heights of Uganda's economy in telecom are owned by foreigners, and they've been here forever. How have they changed this country? If anything, everyone in Africa is doing this, but it does not seem to change. But also the president is obsessed, and I saw him also talking about value addition. For example, with coffee. Value addition does not mean that you package things in plastic bottles or things of that sort, and then you change value. The people who sell coffee, the most expensive coffee in the world, it's not because it was value added, it is because they had single estate coffee. The idea that you're going to package, buy a machine and do whatever, the things that politicians speak about in this country are not the things that make your coffee prime. Because if you sell coffee today in Steinberries in the UK, which is a supermarket branch, that coffee targets a person who cannot buy coffee for more than $10. That is your target audience. The people who make money from coffee are people who are value buyers. Someone who buys 1 kilogram of coffee at over $200.
Yeah.
Not this one who is buying at
10.
At $10. So the ideas of the president, well-intentioned, I think for me have a mismatch, but also the legacy of colonialism also that I wanted to talk about today is, for example, the question of the North and the South. It has not ceased to exist.
Yeah, sure.
That divide of the North and the South. The question of the Bayundi. Are they Ugandans? The other day I've seen Mr. Ruparelia Sudil saying that they too belong to Uganda as Indians. Although I just found that it was a bit problematic for him to say they belong to Uganda because they contribute 65% of GDP. So I said, what do the Baganda contribute to GDP to also belong? The question of belonging, who belongs and who doesn't, has predated us since colonialism. And is a question we're even facing up to date. So for us, Mildred, to say that colonialism simply doesn't matter because we are 62, there's a legacy, there is institutions of the state that have been molded in this colonial culture. Because you go to police, the first thing that police asks you would be that, what is your tribe? How is that important in the fact that someone killed someone or things like that? Why is the tribe an important element in the institution of the state?
Okay.
Because it's the only way that the state sees you. The state can only see you by a tribe. And when you go to the basics of the state, that legacy of tribalism, of what's a tribe? Because a tribe is a very derogatory word. You know, people the British are not a tribe, they're a nation, but then the Baganda are a tribe, the Acholi are a tribe. So you need to understand how derogatory it is in the mind of the colonial master, but it is something you still use up to today. Tribe is a mobilization of identity today. It is a mobilization we use to appear to the state, to do politics and things like that. So tribe is not an invention of Yoweri Museveni, even if he has been in power for 40 years.
Okay.
But also the questions we are facing today, as I conclude, are not questions that Kenya is not facing, are not questions that Zambia is not facing, or Mozambique. So they cannot be unique to the person of Yoweri Museveni. They are questions being faced by countries in the global south.
All right.
Eriasa talks about leaders. I don't really believe the idea that leaders can transform. Eriasa should help us understand that which leader of America transformed America by name, which German chancellor transformed Germany. Oh, yes. Because that idea is actually the idea that leaders transform countries is a recent innovation and it comes from East Asian tigers. And when someone says which leader,
they can be able to lead the path. Not necessarily in themselves, probably that would be the context. But I will be coming back to you.
In very small bit, not in the grand scheme.
Because even a flock needs a shepherd. So probably we're looking at the leader in the shepherd form. But Joseph, let me come back to you before we bundled you to Uganda. But also even us as Uganda, we didn't ask for that 90-degree line around Lake Victoria, and then that V line around Kisoro area. It was a creation, the demarcation.
Sorry to interject.
Yes.
You know, Kisoro was a gift of the King of England, I think, to someone in Germany, because the Kaisers and the royal family in Britain were related. So Kisoro was a gift on the birthday, I think, of the Queen to.
And so that is why we have a V.
Yes, yes.
So clearly,
so it was that abstract.
Allowed to be part of us because we didn't allow to be part of ourselves the way we are. But anyway, out of that, every year we do commemorate years of independence, this number of years of independence. What does it ring a bell towards? What change has come through even after all those years that we continue celebrating after the white man has gone? And yet, in essence, we continue to feel their impact and effect literally in every aspect of life.
Your starting point was for a very important context for this nation called Uganda, right? And I was asking myself the question, but did our forefathers actually sit and say that we want to be a nation, we want to be Uganda? No. Yeah. We were abandoned in some colonial boundaries, so my uncles, the Samia, were cut others are Kenyans, others are
others are
Ugandans. The
Ugandans,
Kalenjin community is Kalenjin, the rest are in Uganda. So you find families split. Others are Ugandans, others are Kenyans, and stuff like that. But also in the practical existence and running of affairs, there are parts of this country that are supported, that rely on other countries more than their own country in terms of the economy, in terms of coexistence, and in terms of the people. My community, the Alur people, I think are 8 million in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we're a small community in Uganda. Yeah. So that's why I've always asked the question that this concept of Uganda, the idea of Uganda, is not our own. Some guys just bundled us. First, the West Nile was given to Belgian Congo. And then they woke up one day and said, now you become part of the British protectorate, and then become part of Uganda and stuff like that. And that divide, by the way, I watched with a lot of attention when the president mentioned constructing a road from, I think, Arua to the Central African Republic. Now, just do a very simple exercise. Come and ask analysts in Kampala. You know what they will tell you? I checked some notable names. I saw Sarah Birete saying, before you go there, first build Kampala roads. But I want you to cross Karuma and go to West Nile and tell them that you want to build a road connecting Arua to Central Africa and listen to the responses.
Listen to the response,
yes. So we're a country divided by our geographical alienation and stuff like that. If I went to Arua and said, there's a road going to pass here, going to the Democratic Republic of Congo, a tarmac road, and going to the Central African Republic, I am speaking to businessmen. I'm speaking to people whose economy is supported by that part of the world, and they will clap, and clap very loudly. But in Kampala, people will be thinking about the road to Nigeria, and the road to Kisasi, and the road to Namungo. The commercial value of that road. You'll argue that probably Kampala and Wakiso raised the bulk of our revenue, but that is a geographical benefit. The person in West Nile is excited about what people think is a silly idea, and the person in Kampala is looking at the road to Nigeria, where many of them use that road to go and drink at night and go back and sleep, or drive from work to home. That's the divide. But also, I think that Joel best captures this concept of independence. I think that it was just, the fact that the Wazungu had been here. Our forefathers thought that finally they are going. They went and danced, wearing shorts and pulling the Union Jack down and the flag up. I think independence is a fraud. It's a word that I have even failed to place a clear definition on, especially for the global south and especially for the African continent. These guys came, set their networks, they left their institutions. One of the arguments I have had every time I go to a police station is what Joel was saying, that what is your tribe? And I have spent not less than 45 minutes asking someone to tell me why.
They're asking about
my tribe is very important. But that was a standard for ethnic profiling. They balkanized us into small tribal groups and then said, okay, now the Baganda are fighting with Banyoro over lost counties and things. They created that division in order to manipulate and run their affairs. And those divisions became the centers of our politics today. So the politics of identity is what was bequeathed to us and stuff like that. But also, I think that I also agree with Joel that it's a fallacy to Musevenize Uganda and everything associated with it. You see, we have this consistency that in the 60s, Uganda's problem was Obote. In the 70s, it became Idi Amin. When Obote came back, it became Obote. Then it became Binaisa. Then it became the junta. And then for the last 40 years, it has become President Museveni. When President Museveni goes, in our minds, the problem will become the next president. But I think that the construct of society is greater than an individual, and there's just so much. Yes, I agree that leadership offers great incentive for transformation, but rarely do countries transform on the brilliance of one individual. You talk about the Asian tigers, people talk about Malaysia, but beyond that one incredible leader, I think that there were structural formations that actually facilitated the transformation of that country. The Democratic Republic of Congo, the land of our ancestors, is mineral rich, very wealthy, taking to Europe all the things they need to manufacture whatever they sell to us very expensively. But the country is in turmoil because the guys left and never left. So the most powerful form of colonialism is now neocolonialism. Guys sit in Washington in small meetings and then decide what should happen across the globe.
Is it all doomed, Joseph, for Africa? And this, I take it beyond Uganda then. Is it all doomed that, yes, with the neocolonialism, which is really, really entrenched? Because even when we look at the global north, which grew to become whoever they are, most of their wealth was taken from Africa. Most of their wealth, raw materials, taken from here. They make whatever finished projects, and then we become the market once again. So while we continue with this independence facade, will there ever be a point of, turning back? We didn't invite them. They came. They stayed with us. We pushed them away.
You see, Mildred, just come back. First, leave our forefathers. My senior brother, Yasa, seems to have issues with how they have run affairs and stuff like that. Let's just settle at our generation. What are the things that we define as cool? Holding a European-manufactured iPhone, latest. You carry a Mac laptop. You drive a German Mercedes-Benz.
Usually second-hand.
Usually second-hand because you can't afford the new one.
The new one,
and then
yes.
you wear suits from the UK and Italy. Turkey is a bit, it's UK, Italy, and stuff like that, and speak from below your nose with some
your
accent.
tongue rolled.
Yeah, your tongue rolled like you're chewing a Rolex, and then you speak. And that's our definition of cool. And then you go, you hang out in places and drink. I don't know what. I don't have experience
Scottish
with
whiskey and British
Russian
whatever.
and stuff like that. Our entire construct is we are like a caricature of Europe, of Germany, of Europe, of America and stuff like that. So that is what we admire. And that is what we construct our children to be. Then we come to studios and talk about independence and stuff like that. And then what is cool, you remember how cool it was for the Obotes to go and study abroad?
Yeah.
Now, if you don't go to Harvard, if you don't go to Oxford, if you don't go to, you're not, even when you sit and discuss with people, the argument they'll be making is not constructive argument. They'll be saying, I am Harvard
School.
I am Oxford, I am Kennedy School of stuff like that. Our brains are properly colonized. They will never be independent and stuff like that. Any attempt at decolonizing Africa will meet. Now we have the multinationals here with us. They are powerful. They have money that can run. That is much more of what African reserves have here. So the multinationals own the capital, they own the power, and then we have people in the political class and the civil service who can't wait to partake of that caricature of being European. At a small pocket change, they will give their country wholesale to whatever they have. So for me, I think we will just exist in that space. Every 9th October, we'll go
commemorate.
Dance. Those who drink will drink a bit and stuff like that. And we will stay stagnant where we are. We will blame Yoweri Museveni. Tomorrow when the president is Joel Mukisa, we will start blaming him. And we consistently, but also maybe a radical shift in ideology among the young people. That's if they don't get carried away by Harvard, Oxford and stuff like that, and wearing cheap suits and driving cheap cars as a sign of arrivalism. If you see, and if you see the people who believed in this country and the ideas they had for it, many of them have gone down, grumbling. Even others who picked up the arms went into what they call the revolution. Mildred, track them down. Have a conversation with them. Yes. They are totally disappointed. They're disappointed, and yet me and you who have never had any power to make a decision are existing in a space that they created. And for me, what annoys me is seeing those people, the people who have been here, they held power, they were in powerful offices, talking, lamenting like us. Guy, you were there. You went to the bush, you picked a gun,
and changed
you
nothing.
came, you held so many offices, you did so many things, and then you come and tell me about how corruption has become so bad. Chief,
you didn't do your role.
No, we go read about you and we can place you at every crime scene where corruption has been mentioned. But and also that's the beauty of Uganda, that you can do everything wrong. Just wake up and say Museveni is bad and must go. There is automatic forgiveness of all your sins and transgressions of the past. You become the new saint. You become the new... I remember, Mildred, we had this conversation when we were discussing the time of the General Sejusa revolt. And he was being projected as the hero, the guy who is taking on presidency. I said, but look, you first drive past Karuma and go to Gulu, and then ask the people there, what do you think about... I see on X is very active these days, General Sejusa, speaking about democracy. And I said, guys, go cross Karuma and go to Acholi land and ask them, what do you think about this guy? How did he relate with you when he was commanding this operation in the north? So we are not honest enough as a country to talk about our shared idea, but also what is our shared goal? Where do we want to go as a country?
Thank you. And actually, that is the point I wanted to bring in, Paul, because this week, Simon asked, what was the promise? While that Union Jack was being lowered, what was the promise? What was the anticipation for Uganda? And how far have we lived to even be able to achieve that? As we commemorate, because every time I say, is it celebration, is it commemoration of independence? What rings, what bells are rung in your mind as a Ugandan?
I think as a country, we are facing a crisis of identity.
Yeah.
The dilemma of defining who we are as a people. Like if you ask Paul Kayonga today what do they think about Uganda, and you ask a lot more million Ugandans to talk about Uganda, everyone will start grumbling, looking for answers, because we have not defined the country or the territory that was created for us. Because Uganda was not a creation of Ugandans.
Maybe that's the reason we don't even know who we are.
Exactly, because the crisis we are facing is this Joseph Sabiti, this Paul Kayonga, this Muchibi, this Mildred, this who. And people on the panel have been asking why they ask for a tribe when you go to the police station. But the tribe has defined Uganda before. The creation of Uganda, it is said, was a creation of nations, original nations.
That's why we said you need to check out the parliamentary gate. Those nations are presented there.
They are the original nations that sat and agreed to make Uganda, territory Uganda, and make a country. So until we define how we relate with those within that territory, we are struggling to find a way of who we are as a country. For example, many of the things that challenge the country globally, but even in Uganda, is political in nature. The politics, until we define our politics and tell ourselves what we need to achieve, how can we run our politics? Because we are making 62 years of independence, we have never seen anyone, any president of the 9, handing over power to another person.
Yeah.
And 62 years, that's a big challenge. So you cannot run away from the politics of the day.
But we decided to pick up politics of our colonial masters. Parliament, judiciary, whatever arms of government is
That's
colonial.
why I'm wondering, did we really understood the concept of Uganda and the kind of politics that we need to do? If we agreed that our forefathers who created this nation were from different regions, backgrounds, and then they agreed to form this territory, and we failed to make a plan for how we can relate and how we can survive in that Uganda. Maybe the failure to adopt the concept of, for example, devolution has also stagnated our behavior as a country and compromised our identity. Because when the president when was speaking about independence, he said, as I have told you many times, that was the first word in his speech, as I have told you many times, it means all of what we are saying has been talked about.
Yeah.
And we seem not to be getting the point of why Uganda behaves the way it does. The president talked about the 3 C's, 3 T's, the coffee, the cotton, the
cocos.
Copper, then the
yes.
T's, the tea, the tourism, and then the another T, there's another, as the colonial identity of the Ugandan economy, that the money economy were in about 9% of Ugandans, and that was the definition of the economic activities. Now I may ask, what is the identity of Uganda's economy today? What can you tell me that this is what defines Uganda as a country? Is it industrialization? Is it IT? Is it
We are now
agriculture?
talking about ATM.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are all over the place and nowhere. So until we find ourselves in a place where we are supposed, where we feel or we think we are supposed to be, that is how Uganda will stand to shape and try to think that, oh, we can do this, we can be this, we can avoid this. Because are you going to be as industrious as China? Are you going to be as IT, whatever, as the other country? Find your own way.
Okay.
What is that way? But I feel all that can be achieved if we manage our politics. Because now we are talking about the politics, the crisis, but we don't know. Every time we have an election, we are trying to think what is going to happen if this election goes this way. We are not yet clear of if we can have an election and come out as a country, not as them, the otherings, us and others. Like, that divide is so big that there are others who are in power and there are others who are struggling to get close to Uganda. And that definition is really challenging us.
Okay.
And I think until we define that, Uganda will be guessing whether it is independent, whether it is moving, whether it is stagnant, I don't know. But that is the question.
And I would pose the same question to you as we take a break. You who is watching us, where are we with regard to this conversation about independence? What are the challenges? What do we need to deal with for us to really fully realize our independence as a nation? I think Joel asked a good one. Is it of the community or the people of Uganda or the nation in essence? But we need to take a very short commercial break and return with much more. Welcome back. Thank you so much for keeping it NBS Television. It's the Morning Breeze, and this is the Media Roundtable. Comes to you every Friday, and journalists in their own perspective make sense of some of the stories that have made headlines. Earlier, as I did introduce the show, I said our neighbors have really decided to give us food for thought. They've given us books to read. They've given us a lot of information to carry on. Away from the Uganda's independence, which I did roll back to the community. Yeah, I know Arias wants to respond to, but we'll continue with that one at a later stage. Probably you'll weave it in. But Kenya's deputy president is half normal and half still in. You know what I mean? Because the National Assembly on Tuesday, it was Tuesday this week, in it wasn't unanimous because it was 281 who voted for Rigathi Gachagua's impeachment, 44 who actually chose to go against that motion, and 1 who abstained. And that is definitely now sent to the Senate. And in 7 days of receiving this particular one, they will have about 10 more days. They will have to start processing it, and they will have up to a maximum of 10 days for the Senate to also be able to take their own decision on whether they do stand with what the lower house actually agreed to or not. What precedence does this set? And I want to start with Joseph, because I know just how much you follow Kenyan politics, and Kenya has given us a lot of fasts in so many ways, because if Rigathi is actually also impeached, he will be the first deputy president of Kenya to be impeached in that manner and taken out of office, meaning there will definitely be a precedent, just like they set a precedent that an election can be annulled very, very clearly, and that a president on so many occasions, twice, can decide the entire cabinet out, will be able to get another one. So what do you think of this, and what do you expect the Senate will actually be having a conversation on this impeachment?
Geoffrey Rigathi Gachagua, I think, needs about 17 votes in the Senate to survive impeachment. For me, that looks mission impossible. He's cooked. In my conversations, I think I prefer to refer to him as a former deputy president now. But also, I think that his fate lies with the court. I don't see him sitting down after the Senate vote. But Mildred, I think that Kenya is consistently, you know, it's very consistent in doing the things they do. The vice president's curse is a known scenario in Kenya. The inception was the fight between Jaramogi and Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, when Kenyatta was president and Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was his vice president. There were two powerful individuals at the helm of the country's politics, and then the struggle for power and the involvement of their errant boys, you know, until I think in 1966 Jaramogi decided to resign and walk out. He had faced so much humiliation and so much that there was a time when when you read his book, Not Yet Uhuru, he writes about guns that were discovered in his office. And he said it was actually agreed between him and Kenyatta that when those guns come, he keeps part of it, Mzee Jomo keeps part of it, and part of it was kept. But when things went south, when he was out of the country, the press was taken to his office and shown guns that he had, you know. So he claims he was being framed towards treason and stuff like that. But also, Ugandan guns were at some point held in Kisumu in transit. President Obote had to make a phone call to Nairobi. After that, then, I think that every president learned that you needed a watermelon vice president to survive. The one who was not politically very active and stuff. So when you go back, you see Moi comes into the picture. Before he became president, everybody wrote off Moi. They dismissed him as a very inconsequential politician. He was so meek, so humble. The inner circle of Jomo Kenyatta stepped on him and did whatever they want, but I think he read the game and calculated very well. When you go back to after President after President Kenyatta, there was President Moi, and who were his vice presidents, and how did he used to appoint them? You know, Dr. Josephat Karanja, Emilio Mwai Kibaki, and then Mudi Awori. In Moi's 24 years, I think he had about 5 or 6 vice presidents, but they were tailored to the politics of the day. And then comes in Mwai Kibaki, and you look at the caliber of people he appointed and stuff like that. What I am saying is that the Kenyan political question has been consistent, that the president has always tamed his number 2. And I think that only William Ruto has been, and Kibaki later were able to survive that curse and proceed to become presidents. But also, when you look at the last term of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, there was clearly war in the presidency. Harambee House Annex and Harambee House were at war. And William Ruto went on the rooftops and hit at everybody, called out the deep state, called the IGP as the most incompetent, called the director of criminal intelligence as the most incompetent, and lambasted everybody and stuff like that. And you know, the interesting thing is that Rigathi Gachagua is being impeached for those same crimes. Yeah. If what he did is gross, what Ruto did was gross pro max. But then he had the thick skin to survive and be able to marshal and become president, to run against the tides. For me, I think that in the long run, Geoffrey Rigathi Gachagua was not Ruto's preferred deputy president. But the politics of the day required a wealthy and ruthless operator. And Rigathi Gachagua gave that
But
to
he had
Ruto.
also given him the support.
No. I'm just saying. When you look at the 2022 elections, the stakes were so high, and Ruto had a choice to make between a refined professor of law who had served as a senator for 2 terms, as a deputy speaker of the Senate, as all these things with what the Wazungu called a glorious CV, and a riffraff in Geoffrey Rigathi Gachagua, and that's the point. So. Ruto did not settle for a fine deputy president. He settled for someone who would deliver the votes. So you need to look at Geoffrey Rigathi Gachagua. He's a former district officer with a security background. He's a ruthless operative. He's a mobilizer. He speaks the language of the mountain. His job, in my view, was to deliver the Kenya Kwanza government. And now that job is done, you don't retain that mobilize as your number 2, especially when he still has to, he starts doing the things you did to outmaneuver your boss, going on rooftops and saying the mountain needs this and stuff like that. So it's now time to bring in the fine deputy president, the one who will even struggle to win an election in his own backyard.
Yes, thank you.
Now, so you bring in Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki. That's my guess as the next deputy president. Even in the Meru side of Mount Kenya, he's not a Rigathi Gachagua, he's not a George Saitoti, he's not a Mwai Kibaki. He's fine, he's more refined, you can send him to speak for you, to represent you, his English is good, he's a professor of law, but he will not be a threat.
He's not the African politics, maybe for lack of a better word.
Yes, he will not be a threat to the presidency. So Ruto is looking at 2027.
I don't agree.
Okay.
But then what will he do when he needs a mobilizer at that election?
Maybe. That's a very good question, because as of yesterday, I think Moses Wetangula, the National Assembly Speaker, should have, as of yesterday, given his colleague, and that is Amason Kingi, he should have been able to receive this notification, and they have
Mildred,
a little bit.
it was transmitted in record time.
That is why I'm saying it was up, and yesterday was like the deadline, which I do expect that the Senate already has this, and it will
by
be
9
able
a.m.
to.
the next day, the Senate already had a gazette notice for the sitting.
That's it.
So it's a first job to be sorted. Yeah.
Do you think Rigathi does survive, or unless he does get to the courts of law to appeal on this? And what causes this very quick rift? Because anyway, rifts between president and deputy president is the same kind of thing between the most recent, I mean the immediate former president and his former deputy president, who is now the president of Kenya. It's not something new. What does the politics of Kenya tell?
One is that the Kenyan courts have usually shown a high appetite in cases of that nature to thwart processes.
What do you mean high appetite?
No, they have an appetite to thwart processes going on in the legislature, which they have not done this time, to try to tell you, to sort of give us a sign that this is a political process to which they would not want to take part. If anything, the Constitution, I don't want to use the banal words of the Constitution, is very clear on the process and to the dot of its perfunctory functions has been followed, because even if you took someone to court, the numbers are really too overwhelming that court cannot turn.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people against whatever in the National Assembly.
They needed 233, they got 281 for the vote.
Yes. So now you go to the Senate, which has about 67 people, and Rigathi, which senator has a backing Rigathi Gachagua? Even in Nyeri is facing problems where he is coming from, and you know the name Rigathi Gachagua, you know the name Gachagua is big in Nyeri. His brother Ndileti Gachagua being a former governor. So for Rigathi Gachagua, I would say that maybe the die has been cast. And this morning, the Daily Nation reported that President Ruto called him minutes before he entered the National Assembly to give his defense. And the phone call lasted 1 minute. And the president seems to, as the story in the Nation suggests, to say that Rigathi has been a bit too abrasive in how he has handled national issues. But also I think it is strategic of Rigathi, because he thought that he cannot appeal to the whole of Kenya, but he can appeal to the mountain. Yeah. If you saw the press conference he held before, because we were supposed to put up a defense in Senate, but he first put up the defense on TV. And he was strategically communicating only to Kikuyus. And in that meeting, he actually says that his mother is born from Meru. It was strategic, because you're talking right now about Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki, who is a Cabinet Secretary for Interior. Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki comes from Tharaka Nithi.
Yes.
That is the west side of the mountain. The west side of the mountain does not have as many votes as the east side of the mountain, where Rigathi Gachagua comes from. Mildred, to inform you, President William Ruto was most elected in Nyeri County, where Rigathi Gachagua comes from. Rigathi Gachagua invested a lot of money in this election. I don't seem to understand what broke this friendship. But also, Rigathi has been a bit unpopular, and I think because he was accused of funding the Mandamano, the Gen Z Mandamano, that's what broke the camel's back.
But he had actually offered a public apology, and even on behalf of
the public apology that began with if the work I'm doing is distracting.
Subjective apology.
Yes, but also Rigathi Gachagua is not, when we're discussing in terms of analogies, Rigathi Gachagua is not William Ruto as deputy president.
Yeah.
Because William Ruto from day one had half of cabinet. Today you don't have cabinet secretaries willing to lose cabinet positions on behalf of Rigathi Gachagua. Even those who come from the mountain, which Rigathi Gachagua seems to taunt. You don't have anyone coming from there to suggest that they are on behalf of Rigathi Gachagua. So it raises a complicated calculus for President William Ruto in terms of how he's going to navigate 2027. But President William Ruto may be comfortable with the fact that right now he has Raila Odinga. Of course, Raila Odinga is a bit old, surviving on a wing and prayer, and that is also dependent on the fact that he wins his AU bid, where Djibouti is such a big factor, but also the fact that I doubt the Luo nation can unanimously vote for someone without seeing Baba on the ticket or having Baba as a running mate. Why people are interested in Mount Kenya? Because Mount Kenya usually will give you a block vote. Even the Kalenjins don't give it to you in Kenya. Because the historical problem that Kalenjins face, that the counties they come from are shared with other. You find some counties they share with the Luhya, some counties they share with, for example, Nakuru. If you saw the public participation happening in Nakuru, many people were opposed to the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua. So I think Rigathi Gachagua is going to be impeached, but I think he's going to go down in the fight, and that's why he refused to resign. You can see the kind of lawyer he chose. He did not choose your ordinary Joe Kamletle. He chose Paul Muite, who has been an activist lawyer for the mountain since the 1990s. So his calculation is, I'll go down as a regional kingpin, but no, I'll go down, but I'll drag you with me. Yeah. And that is why he is going to waste as much time dragging this thing on. And you can see that Ruto, because the deputy president told us that a motion of this nature would require the backing of the president. And it's very clear, the president's hounds are on it. If you see Kimani Ichung'wah speaking, who is the leader of majority and Senate, you know where it is. But also Rigathi Gachagua branded himself as a man purely of the mountain, and that caused rivalry with other regions. And you can see how people like Otiende Amolo was speaking, when they were speaking. You can see how the minority leader, what's his name? Junet Mohammed, that man from Suba. You can see Karoli Amondi was giving testimony to the fact that one time they were in Nyanza visiting the late Ogola, who was CDF. And when they were visiting him, the president was also there. The president was on a regional tour in Nyanza. And Rigathi Gachagua came and told the president that this is not our area. Our area is Mount Kenya, so I've come to pick you. So that is what they feel about him. So Ruto would only take on Rigathi Gachagua in the context of having a backing from Raila Odinga. Very strategic for him that the person who brought the motion is not a Kalenjin, is not a Kikuyu, but rather a member of the Kamba community, and is also a member of Mandela Chapchap, which is Dr. Alfred Mutua's political party. And that also signals, because Ruto did not want to pit it as a Kalenjin versus Kikuyu issue.
That's very true.
So as we go to 2027, that's how I see it.
Exactly, that is what I was about to say, that the bigger picture now is not even on how the vote goes down in the Senate. It's much more about how 2027 would actually look like. And the biggest question I would ask, and as I come to you, Paul, is what's the fate of William Ruto with all this going on in 2027? But your views about the impeachment vote, and as it looks like Joseph said, Rigathi is a former deputy president. And as per the 2010 constitution, he will have set a precedent as being the first public official to be impeached out of office.
I will start from where Muksa stopped, of this mover, this MP for Chibwezi West, Mwenji Mutusi. Like, he's coming from Kamba community. It means Ruto is avoiding a clash between Kalenjins and Chukuyus. Yeah, sure. So the politics of 2027 is already set. Joseph Sabi talked about what the mobilizing factor, that Professor Kithure Kindiki is not the charismatic kind of person that will move the mountain and get you votes. But look at the guy called Ndindi Nyoro. Ndindi Nyoro, the MP for Shiharu, is the current chairperson of the Budget Committee in Parliament of Kenya. He did not sign the motion. He did not vote against Rigathi Gachagua. Why? Abstinence. The guy is coming from the Mount Kenya, and he was the first person to start a war against Rigathi Gachagua when this term, their term of office started. So ideally, you would expect Ndindi Nyoro to be the first
to vote
to slaughter Rigathi, but he did not. Why? Because I think in the politics of Kenya Kwanza of 2027, Ndindi Nyoro is likely to be on the ticket with President Ruto because he has the capacity, the financial muscle, but also the energy to move the mountain and look for those votes. So that is likely to be settled like that. But also, this politics of abstaining, abstain.
It was only one abstinence, yes.
Look at the guy called Babu Owino and Edwin Sifuna, who failed, or who refused, who declined to second the motion to form the 11-member committee in the Senate to investigate Gachagua. Sifuna, as the Secretary General of ODM, currently a deputy minority leader in Senate, was supposed to second that motion for Senate to set up 11-member committee to investigate. He did not do so because in the politics of 2027, he is expected to stand for the governor of Nairobi. If you want to oust the current governor, Jackson Sakaja, who is already at war with Rigathi Gachagua, will you join that fight? If you are...
You want to appear neutral.
You want to appear neutral.
Yeah.
So the politics of the day is at play. That this ambitious Gachagua who wants to be president was never their favorite candidate. Even on the 15th of May 2022, that night when we waited for a day for Ruto to announce his running mate, everyone was like, Professor Kithure Kindiki, all the MPs had voted for him to be the deputy running mate. And eventually, Joseph talked it rightly, Ruto went for a mobilizer, went for Rigathi to deliver that vote. And this is what is likely to happen in my view. Rigathi is going. I don't know why he did not resign, for him to reserve at least...
Can't go down easily.
No, because
if
he is impeached, he will be on a ban of about 10 years without standing for any public office. He will not have the benefit of a former deputy president, the retirement benefits and whatever. I don't know. Maybe he's seeing a surviving kind of mode in Senate, which I doubt, because Joseph talked about 17. I think there are about 23 senators he needs to survive, and 45 for him to go. So if he is to survive, he has to really do a lot of job, because the Senate is going to sit on Wednesday to present. He will have 4 hours to defend himself, and then an hour of final remarks on Thursday before the vote is done to decide whether he goes or not. But whether he goes or not, he has to be relevant, and he's going to be relevant in both politics of 2027 and whether he's a deputy president or he has been impeached, because he has the financial muscle, first of all, and he has the ability to mobilize. So if you want to be an MP, that's why MPs and senators from the Mount Kenya were a bit skeptical. They don't know what the ground will look like if Gachagua goes. But I'm seeing Professor Kithure Kindiki being given the position of the deputy president.
And speak good English, like Joseph said.
And Kimani Ichung'wah becoming the cabinet secretary for interior, as because it is now occupied by Professor Kindiki. Then, because Ndindi Nyoro cannot be deputy now, he has now to start the work of mobilizer that Kithure Kindiki will not do. Then Ndindi Nyoro will start to do, because he will be an MP. He has a huge budget. He's well financed. So remove the mountain and look for the votes. And then in 2027, he may become the running mate for Ruto.
Maybe someone out there is saying, let's first look at our own 2026 before we cross over to the Kenya's 2027. We need to take a very short breather. Arias, please forgive me, but I'll definitely give you all the time to be able to respond. Let's take a very short breather and return to conclude with this particular conversation and what lessons we are picking out. Of course, one will say Kenya is not Uganda, like one minister said, when the Gen Zs were striking and Uganda was also thinking about the same. Let's get back. Right, you're still watching The Morning Breeze, and this is the Media Roundtable. As we went into the break, we were talking about the key stories that have made headlines, and of course, Kenya's Deputy President's impeachment in the National Assembly was still a part of a conversation that we're looking at. And by now, Amason Kingi, who is the Speaker of the Senate, is definitely preparing to have his way on the discussion of this particular one. Will Rigathi Beach saved or not? It seems to be a unanimous agreement here that Rigathi is a former deputy president, as is right now, but it doesn't look like the man is going down without a fight. And what this actually spells out for the 2027 vote already in Kenya. And this is where I come to you, Arias, on, I don't know if you also believe that he has no chance in the Senate, or you're believing otherwise, probably he has a totally different God who could save him.
Thank you, Mildred, for finally coming back to me.
I apologize about that.
That means you have given me license to even go back to that first topic, but very quick comments, because this conversation has been loaded with so much detail.
Yeah.
First about independence, but also about Gachagua in Kenya. And what you notice is that we engage in a lot of description of what has been. This has happened. For instance, going back to our independence, when I spoke about, because you boxed me in to actually speak about General Museveni's speech, and I did say what I thought were my picks and what that excited in my mind when he spoke. And it seems to me I was a bit misunderstood by at least two of the panelists when they said what they said. But the key issue is regarding independence. We can be talking about what happened, what our forefathers expected, what has not happened until now. That's a conversation that I think the Museveni generation and the generations that came before were involved in. My suggestion was simple, that we are supposed to be a generation, the generations that actually think forward and say, we are talking about self-determination so that we have more power to do a lot for ourselves and everything. But there are so many things we cannot change. I am not even worried so much about defining Uganda and all those things. There's a man, Walter Rodney, he wrote a book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. He was writing about the problems that we faced, and he said that one of the biggest problems was that at a time when human labor was the most important factor of production, many of Africa's able-bodied men were taken to North America to grow sugarcane and all that. Others died across the sea. Others were busy hiding in the bushes from slave raiders, and they could not do what others were doing elsewhere. And Africa lagged behind for about a century. Now we have a problem which I think will affect the way we progress. The problem is in the Middle East. Now you find people, graduates here, someone finishes university and they go to do some menial jobs, to be maybe an askari, some to be housemaids and other things. And thousands, I think now, have gone. And those people, if they had stayed here, they would agitate. They would put the state, the government on tenterhooks to say certain things have to happen. We demand employment, we demand that things are done better. Not. I think the government now has that safety valve of sorts that people can now just go migrate, get a few million shillings, come and buy some small plot somewhere and whatever, and then afford data to try and abuse the government out of power and whatever. But the actual agitation, like we saw in Kenya, for instance, in Uganda, it has now moved away. Maybe the government is now under much less pressure than it would be if all Ugandans were here and demanding a part in the. I think that is going to take away something from us as a country, as another opportunity to try and invent and innovate out of dire need and pressure.
Okay.
So the independence leaders have to be thinking about, by independence leaders, I'm not talking about the new generation, to try and see what type of Uganda you want to fashion, and then we lead forward. And when I was talking about leadership, I didn't actually refer to just Yoweri Museveni. I was talking about those issues he was enumerating were generational issues of the people who came before him and him. And now the new generations, the leaders of the new generations have to be thinking about new ideas, new themes of how we lead our countries forward.
And that is why I also bring in the issue of Kenya, that how have they been able to turn around events and change, and yet our independence dates were not too far apart. But like some of the panelists did mention, our politics has played a very big role. Looks like the politics of Kenya is alien to the politics of Uganda.
Exactly, that is where I was heading to.
Yeah.
And I think it is much harder to survive in Nairobi than it is in Kampala.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
Maybe the people of Kenya, their politics, their economy will progress faster because even Mother Nature is not as kind to them as it is to us. Even the Kenyans in the villages and everything. And so their economy is supposed to be a little more sophisticated, they will grow faster, and their politics too. When we talk about the impeachment of Gachagua, I think it is likely to go through. He doesn't seem to me to have the political skill to survive it. I listened to his public defense of himself explaining how he acquired his wealth and everything. For me, the key thing that he said was, Ruto told us that Raila was a bad man. So he took it that Raila was a bad man because Ruto told them. And that's the reason he fought, who he called his brother, Uhuru, in the mountain. That we fought him because Ruto told us Raila was a bad man, and this man was with who? With Raila. Now he's no longer sure whether Uhuru is a bad man. Now he's his brother and whatever, because Ruto lied. And actually Ruto lied because I saw him speak after he was declared winner, and he said there is no handshake. The possibility of handshake is not to even be thought about. So Gachagua came and was lamenting like a common person that this man lied to us, there is no way we are going to deal with Raila and whatever, and then he started dealing with him. So you see that whereas he may be abrasive, as they accuse him of being and everything, he may not have sufficient political sophistication to survive some of the things. It has been already mentioned here on this panel that the sins over which he is being impeached may actually be even smaller sins than what Ruto engaged in. I remember one day in Kenya they were talking about when at the height of the disagreement between then President Uhuru and Deputy President Ruto, and they were talking about a possibility of a lifestyle audit. We want to see how this man who used to sell chickens became so rich and whatever and stuff, and nothing went on. And so they couldn't move against Ruto and whatever because maybe President Uhuru knew there was even no way he could afford to procure the impeachment of Ruto, even if the Constitution...
Or even the dire consequences that could have come with the impeachment of Ruto.
Even impeaching him, getting the numbers in the houses get him impeached would be practically impossible.
Okay.
That is something he must have thought through and said, we cannot do this.
All right,
So-
our time is really fast spent, but we need to wrap up this conversation. I will start with you by giving you 30 seconds on what you think this whole impeachment conversation holds for the 2027 vote in Kenya.
First of all, it is a very good thing. I actually wish, it's not that I don't like Gachagua, but I wish he gets impeached, because it is important that systems are tried. Their constitution provides for the impeachment of a deputy
So
president.
let precedents be
Let
set.
it be done so that people can demystify power. We understand that when you are in office, you do things that are impeachable. We impeach you. We do this and whatever. That's a very good thing. I hope it happens. And when it happens more, very often in many countries, people who hold political office will now learn that it is just a responsibility. You don't become God when you get power.
Thank you. I think that's a very good lesson of testing what the law says and how it can be taken. I'll give you 30 seconds as well. What does this hold, and what lessons are we taking out of this impeachment version of Kenya?
For now, Uganda has no lessons.
I didn't say Uganda particularly.
For
So please
impeachment,
go ahead.
there's no one you're likely to impeach. But for Kenya, I sense that 2027 comes with an enlarged Kenya Kwanza, where you have ODM. I saw Simba Arati speaking that now with the way President Ruto is doing things, in 2027 we can have a conversation. Simba Arati is a governor of Kisii, and he's now a deputy leader in terms of ODM.
But most importantly, a member of the inner ring.
You know what?
The inner ring of Raila.
The inner ring of Raila Odinga. So I smell that because I saw the Amani National Congress of Musalia Mudavadi saying that they want to join formally UDA, not at a coalition basis, but as parties. So I sense that many people are predicting that the son of Samoei will have a hard time in 2027 given the economic challenges Kenya is going through right now. I sense that he will come back. I'll bet
Stronger.
I'll bet no with the challenges. Despite of the challenges, I bet he'll come back. But for me, I smell a rift within the mountain, especially on the old cleavages of West versus East, because it's called Gema Association. Kikuyu, Embu, Meru Association. So I smell that those cleavages will be, I get the sense that those cleavages will be back in 2027. And all this is dependent because, you know, it is very impossible to predict the future because we also have Raila Odinga's AU election hanging in the balance. And it's the only way that Raila is saying that he wants a soft landing. Without a soft landing, you may be shocked Mzee is back, and then we may need to talk to Gachagua in much more persuasive ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paul, 2027 is not too far away from the happenings of what is in Kenya. Anything in between, and what more pudding will be dealt with? What dough is being baked for 2027?
I think the deputy president now will be in the opposition in 2027, and he will have a new party. You know, in Kenya, almost every time they have a new coalition and a new party. You can't even imagine that Jubilee was in power for 10 years. It is nowhere to be seen now. We have Kenya Kwanza and whatever, UDA. So I suspect that Gachagua will have a few members to engage with, form a new political party, and because we predict if Baba goes to the African Union, it's most likely that the bigwigs in ODM and other opposition parties now will be in government with Ruto. So Gachagua will become the face of the opposition and the Mount Kenya for that matter.
All right, Joseph, you will have the final say. Everything that happens, Joel said there is no lesson for Uganda. We are in a totally different world, but let's do that for Kenya as well. What do you foresee ahead of 2027?
3 quick things. One, it's the perfect time to start facing Mount Kenya. The House of Mumbi is going to undergo a political reconfiguration. Paul, it's not only the Member of Parliament for Kiharu who is playing the safe card. Governor Anne Waiguru is playing safe. Governor Irungu Kangata is playing safe. Actually, all the worthy, apart from William Kabogo, all the worthy, Moses Kuria is playing safe. He's not saying... Yes, imagine Kuria is playing safe. He has not tweeted, he has not said anything. So the House of Mumbi, I think, is having an internal conversation about the future. That's the political watermelon. So there's going to be reconfiguration of politics around Mount Kenya, and Rigathi Gachagua, unfortunately, is not William Ruto. He doesn't have his brother Nderetu Gachagua, who seemed to leave him part of his wealth, had been impeached before his death. He had so many accusations of it is very easy for William Ruto and the system to actually attach part of the Gachagua family wealth as proceeds of crime and deal with it decisively. And make no mistake, William is not Uhuru. He will not allow Gachagua to continue getting millions in business and operate freely. Once he's incapacitated, once he's impeached, he loses his security entitlement as a former deputy president. He loses his benefits. And then he will no longer have the ground to run business as effectively as he has been in the last 2 or so years. So he will be weaker, and he's no William Ruto. But number 2, there's going to be reconfiguration of the politics of Nyanza, but that depends, like Joel said, on where the old man goes. And you see, every time you write off Raila Odinga is when he pulls off a one-off.
A masterstroke.
The last time we sat here, I think, with Joel, and I said it was time. I make no mistake, I am a fond admirer of Raila Odinga. I admire him, and I have been open about this. But the last time we sat here, we had all written him off. After 2022, we said it's time for Baba to take a rest. Just when we thought that, then Baba emerges inside Kenya Kwanza, and who is left crying? The man who had set a trap for him around the house. Yes, set a trap. The trap caught him. The trap is taking him. So there's going to be reconsideration, realignments of political alliances. But I do not actually know, Paul, why people are surprised that Ruto is talking to Raila.
Raila is a funny member of ODM, rather Ruto.
Yeah,
No, these guys have been together for a long time. The things they've done together are much more than the things that separate them. Yes. This was a deputy party leader of the ODM. And people only listen to Ruto saying that there will be no handshake. They didn't listen to the fact that he said, when the results were about to be announced, I spoke to Raila Odinga, and we pledged to each other that whichever way the results come out, Kenya will be first. Yeah, what do you think they were talking? You think they were sending pictures between themselves and stuff? So the Kenyan politics is much more of what is not said than what is said. And Rigiji, I think we are going to miss his clown value in the politics of Kenya. The clown value that he brought, the drama, the comical relief that he brought as deputy president.
The shareholding.
The shareholding. But you see, that's a fact.
Of course.
Governance in Kenya is about shareholding. Yeah. How your community votes and how yes. You see, the man has not done anything. The man he's being impeached for being a Kenyan politician, for doing what every Kenyan politician does, except he forgot that above him there's a Doyen from Sugoi who takes no prisoners. Okay. He will deal with him, and then 2027, he will figure out a way to survive. Make no mistake.
We'll be here.
Whether whether Kenyans love him or not, Ruto will be president in 2027.
Here we are, and we will be here to give you all the details as they do unfold. Kenya's politics is a totally different one, but I loved when Area said, we need to test some of these things. We just need to see that they can be able to work. Thank you very much, Joseph Sabiti, for your time. Yes, please.
Yeah.
So let him be an experiment, and we see how the 2020 Constitution of Kenya is working. Thank you very much, Paul Kayunga. Arias, it's always a pleasure to have you. And Joel, thank you so much for as well sparing time. And to you, our viewer, we don't take it for granted. Thank you for joining us. I am Mildred Tohai. Say good morning and God bless you.